Hello everyone, Andy here, and here's what you can look forward to in today's episode.
In today's episode, in Team Season Preview 11 out of 32, I was joined by Los Angeles Rams fan Sam Andrews as we preview their upcoming season. Sam talks about issues at the secondary.
It's a lot of players that can make a big play, but not consistently.
Sam also discusses a potential last season for Matthew Stafford.
If he can pull off another Super Bowl, then I think he's achieved everything he needs to.
And Sam predicts the team's overall record in our win-loss-tie segment. Hope you all enjoy.
Hello and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast. I am, as ever, your host, Andy Davis, and today's team season preview is the Los Angeles Rams. Now, with me, I've got a returning guest. He is our designated Los Angeles Rams fan. Back on the show today is Sam Andrews. Sam, how are you? How are things?
Yeah, good. Yeah. Just eagerly waiting the season to start, to be honest. It feels like it's been extra long this summer so far that we've not had football about. But
yeah, it's always the way, isn't it? It always feels like the longest time in history. I saw this great meme. It was basically a split screen. There was both pictures were the Earth. There was one picture of the Earth spinning round really slowly to signify the caption was NFL off season, and then you had the NFL season, and you had the Earth spinning like really, really fast. And it's so true because it seems like the longest time in history. It feels like the longest time in history. Those 8 months without NFL action, and then literally the season flies by so fast. It's like goes in the blink of an eye. So yeah, it's we're now at time of recording, we're 10 days away from the season starting in terms of pre-season. Of course, this may be out when that game between the Lions and Chargers happens. I think it's one of the very few games I actually watch in pre-season is that Hall of Fame game because it's been so long. Don't quite tune into the third week of pre-season, but certainly that first week in Canton, Lions Chargers is going to be fun to watch. Let's head on to the ins and outs of the Los Angeles Rams off-season, I should say. So with free agency and re-signing, you brought in the likes of Devontae Adams, Poona Ford, Akello Witherspoon, Troy Reader, as well as Ronnie Rivers and Britton Covey. You lost the likes of Cooper Kupp, also DeMarcus Robinson, Hunter Long, Tyler Johnson, and Rashad Weaver, amongst many others. And then you took, in total, 6 players in the draft, and the first 3 taken were Terrence Ferguson, 46th overall, linebacker Josiah Stewart, 90th overall, and running back Jarquez Hunter, 117th overall. Sam, for you, your take on your team's off-season as a whole.
I'll start with, for me, what was the biggest one, which was getting Matt Stafford re-signed to a new contract and keeping him. I think there was obviously at the start of the off-season, there was rumours that he was being looking at potentially moving on. I think there was talks of him looking at the Giants and the Raiders. And then out of nowhere, we decided to re-sign him to a contract extension. So, that for me, that was one of the biggest elements of our off-season. I think bringing in Devontae Adams, I think he has something to prove. And I think that, from everything that I've read about his impressions of being in LA compared to what he's had over at the Jets and then before that at the Raiders and that, I think it sounds like he's in a really good place, and I think he wants to be improving and wants to showcase that he's still got it, which I quite like. Everyone who sort of knows me, I'm a big Cooper Kupp fan, so it was gutting to see him go, especially to the Seahawks of all teams. I think the only other team that could have been worse would have been the Niners. I think it was a mixed bag in the off season, but I think overall, I like the fact that we obviously added to the D line, which I think I do genuinely think we have one of the best D lines in the league. I think there's still areas we can improve, but I think trading out the first to get to essentially have 2 firsts in the next round, the next year, I think was really good business. So yeah, I think we've done well in the off season. I think, like I said, there's probably others that probably think they could probably done a little bit better, and there's still areas we need to improve. But I think it was good going into that season with what we've got.
Yeah, I mean, what I love about this Rams team is, we've probably said it in years gone by, but you think about, how there was the whole F pick situation with Les Snead and Sean McVay, and they got the Super Bowl. They traded for Matt Stafford. They got their Super Bowl, and it felt like, I think you as well as many others were thinking, like, they're going to go for a rebuild now. But the smart picks that you guys made in the last few years has put you guys back in contention again. You think about the likes of Kobe Turner, Braden Frisk. Jared Verse was the first rounder, but a lot of the rest of this young defense is players on second round picks, third round picks, and even looking at offense, you got Kieran Williams, 5th round pick or 4th round pick, Puka Nacua the same, and they're all still on rookie deals. So I think this is a good time, especially with Stafford, still being 10 years last year or two, and we'll get into the odd stat in a minute. But I think you've got a perfect blend of young players on rookie deals who are playing really well, and a quarterback who's wanting to get one more chance of a ring, who's still, I think, a good quarterback. So overall, I think this Rams team, is set for a good year. Obviously, we will do our win-loss tie section at the end. But I think it's a good situation to be in. You've got the best GM, maybe second best GM in the league. You've got a great offense. Defensive line is insane. But the one thing that's going to potentially haunt you is the secondary. And that is my first question I want to ask you. Is about that, because we saw Saquon Barkley torch defense in many different areas in that playoff game, but I think you look at sort of the team where the weaknesses are. There aren't many weaknesses, but I feel like secondary is perhaps the one that, if you're going to lose games in big moments or playoffs, it feels like that will be the thing that will cost you more than maybe the D-line or the offense.
Yeah, I've said for the last couple of years that our secondary is most definitely our weakest part. I think the linebackers that we've got, I think we've got Byron Young, Byron Young, who I think is a solid player, but I think he's more of a addition to the to the D line than he is necessarily an out and out linebacker. Bit sort of similar to what Jared Verse. I mean, Jared Verse is technically an O-line that's sort of a linebacker that's sort of more of an edge. And the likes, obviously, we brought back Troy Reader, which, to be honest, I'm not massively overly fussed about. I don't really rate him. I've said for a while our linebackers are sort of our weakest areas. I think we're Shula's very much bend, don't break sort of defensive coach. He likes 5 at the front, and I think that's what we're going to be running a lot of. So I think maybe I think adding Poona Ford to that front line is where we'll be, especially when we sort of come up to against the Eagles. I think in week 3 or 4. I think it's week 3. The plan will be to stop him at the point of contact rather than allowing him to get out there. If he gets out there, the likelihood we're going to stop him is pretty much second to none. We've seen two times last season. So yeah, it's still an area I do think we need to massively improve. Looking at them at the moment, Omar Spates had a good season in his rookie season, but again, he was a 7th round pick. Troy Reader, I'm not a massive fan of, as I've sort of said, and like I say, the other one that we brought in was Chris Paul Jr., he's an interesting one because he's very athletic. He's not the biggest of guys, but he's quick, and I think that the plan is to use him more when it comes to sort of like the screen plays to get out onto the outside quick, because I think that was one of the things that we learned when we had Saquon Barkley against us. He was, as soon as he got out onto the flank, he was gone. So I think we need someone who's a bit quicker. So I think that's the purpose of bringing in Chris Paul. But I think there's enough there that I think we can build on. And I think one of the big things to remember with this is the majority of this defensive team are probably what now 2-3 years old, where they're either rookies or within their second or third years. So they're still building up their learning, and they can still make massive plays. We watch sort of a Kayla Witherspoon every now and then; he'll pop up with a good play. Cameron Kitchens, I think, had a very good rookie season. I just think that it's a lot of players that can make a big play, but not consistently. And I think that's where we tend to get caught out because they don't have that consistency to them. That's where we can sometimes fall down. But I think as long as they sort of learn and develop and work on the areas where we're sort of at, I think it's just going to be a very much similar situation of we stop it at the point of contact. If someone gets off a big play, they get off a big play. It's just going to happen. But I think that's how it's going to work, is that it's going to be very much like last season, where we see plenty of sacks, plenty of tackles for loss, also massive chunk plays for the offense.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned then, I think I want to look back into last season. I mean, some of the games you won or lost, I mean, you let in 26 points, albeit in overtime against the Lions, 41 points allowed against the Cardinals in week 2, 24 against the Niners in week 3, 20 against the Vikings in week 8, 20 against the Seahawks in week 9, 23 against the Dolphins in week 10, 37 against the Eagles in week 12, 42 against the Bills in week 14, and then 30 against the Seahawks in week 18. So I think for all the defensive prowess of that D-line, I think the D-line is by far your biggest strength on that side of the ball. I think, if you're going to want to go far in the playoffs, I think you can go far in the playoffs. You're going to need the rest of that defense to show up because, it's all good, being able to stop the run with the D-line or something like that. But it showed against the elite running backs, even that great D-line couldn't stop Saquon Barkley, who was, albeit, for me personally, should have won MVP. I think that's certainly going to be something that McVay is going to work on, as well as your coaching staff. And I think that's going to be a concern. But I think also you've got to level the teams at. A team that's in rebuild have actually made playoffs multiple years since. So, can't argue too much. But, it's going to be an interesting season. But, of course, that leads into Matt Stafford. We talked about him earlier, reworking his contract, which does run into 2026. I think he's got something like $11 or $14 million in 2026 as well. Where are you seeing sort of his time as an NFL player? Do you think that he could possibly end his contract early and sort of have one final year? I think certainly if he wins the Super Bowl, I think that would be a perfect time to end. But how are you feeling about Stafford in terms of how long he has got left as an NFL player?
I think obviously he's definitely playing this year. I think that the decision will be made with how well we get on. I think if we manage to make if we get the Super Bowl, then I think that's it. He's done, because he'd then be a 2-time Super Bowl winner. He may even get sort of like a Super Bowl MVP. You don't know how it's going to play out, but I think in order to be able to, his kids are at an age where he's probably going to want to start spending more time with them, and I just think that, as I say, if he can pull off another Super Bowl, then I think he's achieved everything he needs to, and I think that'll be the end of it. I do think with us trading away our first round, I think we are anticipating potentially that this is the last year and that we're going to use that additional pick to maybe pick up a quarterback. I would quite like for him to be around for another year whilst we break in that rookie. I'm a massive advocate for not starting a rookie unless they are, like a Jaden Daniels. And I don't think, looking at who's potentially going to be available in next year, I don't think there's anyone for me who stands out as they can take off straight away. So I think no matter what happens, I think for me, I think this will probably be his last year, but I would like him to stay on another year if we are going to draft a quarterback. I think the problem with it is, and this is the worry that I have, is if we lose Stafford, we potentially lose McVeigh, because I think that McVeigh will then leave in a position where he's left enough for someone else to step up and take over. And I don't want to lose McVeigh. If I had the choice of Stafford or McVeigh, I'd rather lose Stafford. I think losing, but I could see them both going. So, yeah, I think it'll also depend on how healthy he stays this year. I mean, he's already going to be limited in his first few weeks of the preseason because of his back. He's got issues with his back, which is a recurring thing that he's had over the last few years. So to me, I don't want him to leave, but I if his health deteriorates and he has any sort of setbacks with his back and that, I could quite easily see him retiring at the end of this year.
Yeah, I agree. And I think with McVeigh, you have to find, if you can, a way to keep him, because he is, for me personally, the second best head coach in the league. I think he is that valuable to the team. I think he feels like he is the franchise. I think the kind of personality he has, and I do think he is made for TV. I do think he's maybe a 21st century John Madden in terms of a coach turning into someone who goes on TV and excels. I do think with his sort of memory and the way he talks on TV, I feel like he would be an amazing analyst, especially like play-by-play. He'd be really good for that. But I think he's too young and too talented to be sitting on the TV. He should be sitting there as a coach. And I think that as long as he's there, you're always going to be competitive. He had, one bad year after you made the Super Bowl? Maybe the year after you made the Super Bowl. Either way, you know.
Yeah, it was the year after the year. It was the Super Bowl rerun that failed miserably. But I mean, there's so many people that sort of have, and again, I don't want to put too much on it, but like the resurgence of people like Baker Mayfield, like he was pretty much dead and gone at the end of his Browns career, and then he joined us, and someone I mean, he managed to bring out the best of Baker in a very, very bad situation, and I think Baker's probably had two of the best years of his career at the Bucs. So, you know, I do think that, you know, if anyone ever gets the chance, listen to some of the interviews with Sean McVay. I think they're absolutely fantastic. The way that he talks, like you say, he's made for analytics and that. But I also think that it's, like you say, he's the second best coach in the league. I think by far the only one that's best at the moment is Andy Reid. I think there's no one really at the moment that's up there. Obviously, I think there's a few up and comers. I think, you know, the likes of Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson, which we can talk about. See how he gets on at the Bears. But yeah, for me, he's irreplaceable, and I think that to lose him would be a killer for most. I think if we had a choice as a collective, whether we lose Matt Stafford or we lose McVay, I think everyone would rather lose Stafford, because we can cope without Stafford. I don't think you can cope without the likes of someone like McVay.
Absolutely not. But I think the one thing that you will have as a result of having McVay, in terms of, you think about Stafford's replacement, and I used to call it the Kirk Cousins line, but Freddie from the franchise tag calls it the Mike Tomlin line. The Rams will never be bad enough under McVay to have the number one overall pick, unless there's a horrible injury bug, like we had, like all the disaster season we saw after winning the Super Bowl. But even then, you weren't a top 2 pick or anything like that. So that's the one thing that you will have on the downside having McVay, is that if you want to rebuild, whilst he'll probably win you games maybe you shouldn't have, in terms of getting that next quarterback to replace Matt Stafford, unless there's a really good quarterback class and you can trade up to maybe the 7th spot and get someone there, it'll be hard to find a good quarterback, because the best quarterbacks tend to go in the first 5 picks. And I don't see a world ever where McVay is a head coach of the Rams where they're a top 5 pick, unless they get lucky like the Bears did and trade for someone who have a bad season. But, you know, that's the only downside to having McVay, is that he's never going to get you a top pick. But at the same time, he can win you games when you maybe shouldn't. And I think, you know, you go back to that Baker Mayfield game, I believe it was against the Raiders at the SoFi, where he had this amazing moment in the game, which probably wouldn't have happened if it wasn't McVay. And you pointed out correctly that, yeah, maybe the Bucs period he's had is obviously partly is down to Canales and Liam Cohen, but I think also McVay almost getting his confidence back before that move. I think that's certainly because the Bucks didn't think he's any good because they only offered him $4 million on a 1-year deal. They expected him to be there just for 1 year and move on, but he's now got a 3-year deal worth $100 million. And yes, I think Sean McVay is, we talk about a lot of coordinators who don't succeed as head coaches. Like we talked about Adam Gase in the past, Vic Fangio. You could argue. No, I'm not going to say what I'm going to say. But either way, a lot of coordinators they don't work out as head coaches, but McVay has done that with an excellence. So yeah, I think for me, McVay, he is the crucial part of this franchise. I think Les Snead is also a crucial part. I think as a GM, he's made some great moves, but Sean McVay for me, he is the heartbeat of this team.
Yeah, I agree.
And I'm hoping, provided I'm lucky enough to get the media cred again this year, that I'll be able to hopefully ask him a couple of questions in a press conference, which for me, I view him as my favourite ever NFL head coach. And it'd be, for me, an amazing moment to have that, because I always say that if I got to the NFL in 2019 or 2018, I'd be a Rams fan, probably for him, probably. So, amazing coach. And I think he'll be, if you go far in the playoffs this year, I think you can play a lot of it down to Matt Stafford, but I think a lot of it you can put down to McVay, who I think is a fantastic head coach. So let's head to our final section, which is going to be our win-loss-tie segment. Of course, those who don't know the segment by now, every fan who comes on predicts their team's record by going through each game and answering with a win-loss-tie. Now, Sam, you came on 12 months ago, and the Rams did end the year with a 10-7 record. Do you by chance remember what your prediction was 12 months ago for your team?
No, I actually can't remember what it was, but I maybe say like 9-8 or something like that.
11-6. So you were one win above what the actual prediction was, but I think it's pretty spot on. One loss here and there. I think that's pretty good. So if you're hoping this year you can make it exactly the correct prediction.
Hopefully. We'll see.
Well, week one, we mentioned CJ Stroud before. Week one, you host the Houston Texans.
Yeah, this is a tough game, but I'm going to go with a win. I think we're going to start the season strong.
Okay, so then week two, you are on the road to the Tennessee Titans, of course, a team you beat in the Super Bowl back in the 1999 season.
Yeah, and it's another win. I think they're going to be one of the worst teams in the league. I think bedding in Cam Ward and, a few other bits, but I don't see them being that strong.
Okay, well, the opposite end of the spectrum, you're going from the number one overall pick last season to the Super Bowl champions and on the road as you take on the Philadelphia Eagles. Win, lose, or tie? I
think there's going to be a loss. I think they're going to have our number again. Saquon's going to do some outrageous stuff. And yeah, it's just everyone's going to have the same opinion of us as they did every time we're just getting cooked by Barkley.
Well, week four, you're back at home, and this time you're taking on the Indianapolis Colts.
I've got this as a win again, so I think 3-1 start is about right.
And then week 5 is a home game against the San Francisco 49ers.
I have this as a win.
Okay, so then week 6, you're on the road and you're taking on the Baltimore Ravens.
I think this is going to be a loss. I think they're going to be very good again this year. Their defense is just crazy good, and I think that it'll just be another situation, a bit like what we have with Barkley. It'll just be Derrick Henry and Lamar just causing havoc. Yeah,
it's a good old team, and I think they'll be one of the favourites to win the AFC and the Super Bowl as well. So week 7 is a trip to London. Now, before we get on to the game itself, which is against the Jags at Wembley Stadium, are you going to the game, Sam?
I am going. I did say that this year I was not going to go to an NFL game in London, and then the Rams were out as the team, and I kind of went, oh, I'm going to have to go now. So yes, I will be going. Thankfully, managed to get tickets fairly easily as well. So that was good.
And you don't have to say, but how much were your tickets?
It was £80 a ticket. So I'm up in the gods. I wasn't going to spend silly money on it, but as long as I'm there, I mean, I'm sitting in pretty much the exact same spot that I've sat in every time I've gone to the London games, so I know the view's pretty good. I think it doesn't really matter where you are in the stadium, apart from maybe at the very, very back, like behind the goal. I don't think there's a bad seat in that stadium. So, which isn't not this what I would say about the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, but that may be a bit of Arsenal Spurs bias involved with that one. But
yeah, because I always think that, like, I see in a lot of sort of VIP areas in, like, not the boxes, but like in the seats themselves. I always feel like if you're one of those seats, particularly in NFL, I feel like your views can be blocked by all the players in the sideline. I feel like if you're high up, you can see all the plays, you can see what's happening, you can see, how defenses are calling schemes, offenses as well. Obviously, I think the ideal seat is the halfway line, middle to front. But I think certainly where you are in the gods, I think certainly in NFL, I think it's one of the best sports to watch in the gods. I think football, certainly boxing, I would not want to watch that in the gods. Certainly, football-wise, it's still good, but you'd rather be near the front. But I think NFL, you can see a lot what's going on from a distance. I think basketball's one. I think basketball you could really enjoy from a distance. But yeah, I think NFL is best I can think of sport where you're watching it in the gods. I think that's going to be a good occasion. I think it's going to be a good game. I think for me personally, it's one I'm looking forward to the most out of the three in London. Of course, you've got Travis Hunter with the Jags. Of course, they're going to bring their Wembley sort of experience. They play there every year, so they'll have that advantage on a neutral venue. Not really neutral anymore. This sort of is their home ground now in a way, their second home. And what I've noticed in the last few years is the increase in Jags fans and sort of the percentage around the stage, and that is Jags fans. You see the waving of the teal flags and all that you get with Jags games at Wembley, and it does feel like a home game. I find out at Wembley when the Jags play. So that's going to be tough. It's down as a road game, even though it's a neutral venue. Sam, for this one, win, lost or tie?
I think we're going to be we're going to win that game. Last time we played, we won against the Bengals, which is the first live game that I ever got to see. So I think, we'll do the exact same thing. We'll just go and win again.
I think that game as well was home of, I think personally, one of the best ever London touchdowns. That sort of reverse flea flicker from Jared Goff to Cooper Kupp in that game. I remember that very well. I thought it was one of the best plays I've seen in London. You can look at even last year, the Van Ginkel pick six, but I think, that was me. I always have a good memory of, that for me is one of the best I've seen in London.
Yeah, I mean, if we can return with the 24-10 win again, I'll take it.
Any day of the week.
Yeah.
So you have got a week 8 bye. So week 9, you're taking on at home the New Orleans Saints.
It's a win. I think they're going to be probably one of the worst teams in the league this year. They've lost too many pieces. Obviously, Derek Carr retiring, new head coach. I just think it's going to be a lot for them to have to manage. I think they're going to be very much like the Arizona Cardinals. They'll battle in games, but eventually they'll just won't have enough to win.
Yeah, I think they're going to be. If they're not in the top 3 picks in the draft next year, I will be shocked. So week 10 is a NFC West matchup, the first of 2 in a row. You're on the road to the San Francisco 49ers.
So I think this one's going to be a loss.
Okay, so then week 11 is the return of Cooper Kupp to the SoFi Stadium as you host the Seattle Seahawks.
Again, I think this one's going to be a very tight game, but I do think we're just going to win. Only just, though. I can't see it being a massive result.
Yeah, that's going to be, I think, a really good game. I think that could be one of the best games of your season in terms of to watch as a neutral. I think that would be brilliant. Week 12 is a home game against Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Now, I have this as a loss, and I think that's just because there's just something about Tampa Bay. I just think they're going to, again, I think it'll be a tight game, but I think it'll be like the Seahawks game, but they'll just win out just. I think, as long as they can stay fit, they can keep the likes of Evans fit. I think they're going to be probably one of the ones contending for, probably going to walk away with their division, to be honest. But
yeah, they're a good team, and I think they'll be in with the shuttle game. I think it'll be them and the Falcons battling for that NFC South, and I think they're going to be right up there. I think even not even just the division. I think in terms of the playoffs, I think they could be a little bit of a dark horse. Week 13 is first of two back-to-back road games, and the first one is against the Carolina Panthers.
I've got this as a win. Again, similar to what about the Tennessee, I think that they're going to be okay, but I just don't think they just don't have enough. I think they're just too weak, and I think that they need a few more extra players. But I am quite excited to watch Tet McMillan. I did kind of want him. If we weren't to get Devontae Adams, I really wanted us to go and get Tet. So I think he could be an interesting player to watch in the future. How it'll pan out in Carolina, I don't know, but we'll see.
So week 14, you're on the road to the Arizona Cardinals.
I think this will be a win. I think, I do think that game last season where they beat us was a freak accident. I just think they caught us cold at the very start and we just couldn't recover. But again, they've got some interesting pieces. I really like Trey McBride. I think he's fantastic. And I think as long as we can catch Murray, because that front line's going to be getting to him. If they can catch him, it's great. But he's a little wriggly guy, so we'll see.
Well, week 15 is your penultimate home game of the season, and oh boy, what a game. This has potential to be an NFC Championship preview as you host the Detroit Lions. Sam, for this one, win, loss, or tie?
I'm going for a loss. People are going to be saying that the Lions are not going to be the same without Ben Johnson. I completely disagree. I think they're going to be just as good. They may not be as extravagant with the types of plays that they go for, but they just have so many weapons. I just think they're just going to be good. So yeah, I'm going to go with the Lions win, and I know that Fletch will be happy to hear that.
And of course, Fletch is due to come on later on in the off-season for the Lions season preview, so keep an eye out for that. Week 16 is a road game against the Seattle Seahawks.
I'm going to go with a win. Just again, another. I think they're for me. They're the team that I think could be. They could be the ones that challenge us for the division. Personally, I think they're going to be slightly better than the Niners.
Interesting. So week 17 is your final road game of the season as you travel to Mercedes-Benz Stadium and play the Atlanta Falcons.
Return of Raheem Morris. I think it's going to be another win. I suppose we're going to him, but yeah, I think it will be a win. I just think that they always fail to deceive the Falcons. They have so many good pieces, and I just don't think it works. I mean, they have my boy from Texas in Bijan, and I just think they just don't utilize them as they should, and I think it's to their detriment. So yeah, another win.
Well, week 18 is your final game of the season. It is at home, and you're taking on the the Arizona Cardinals. For the final time in this episode, Sam, win, loss, or tie?
A win.
Okay, so that means, according to you, you'll be finishing with a 12-5 record, which would get you to the playoffs, no doubt. If that's the case, how far are you going in the postseason?
Let's go for it. We're going to go all the way. We'll just go. We're going to go all the way. I do genuinely think that it's between us, the Eagles, and the Lions for that Super Bowl place. I just think that if we can somehow avoid the Eagles in the playoff run and hope for the Eagles maybe get the Lions and one of them knocks each other out, then we can maybe face the other in the playoff final, or in the NFC Championship. But yeah, I just think that if the real challenge, I think the way I see it playing out, and this is me probably being a bit more dramatizing the whole thing. We love to say that the NFL scripted. I just the way obviously I predicted that we'd lose to the Eagles in the regular season. If we manage to get them in the playoffs at some point, I think we'll beat them, and that'll be the catalyst for us getting into the Super Bowl. So yeah, I'm playing the dream storyline.
I mean, boy, what a game that would be! Eagles Lions divisional round. I mean, we were robbed of that in the NFC Championship. I mean, Jaden Daniels completely spoiled that that idea. I mean, I would say Alvaro Morata ruined stopped us getting an El Clasico Champions League final when they were both in their prime, and I feel like Daniels and the Commanders stopped us from having that amazing game, because I think that the game was still good, but I think the Eagles ran away with it towards the end. I even left before the game ended. I watched it at a friend of mine, Howells, in Cardiff. We all left in the fourth quarter because we knew it was over, which I rarely do watching NFL games. But I think that would have been, when they're both playing so well, I think that would have been a storybook game. But I think certainly, I think in terms of if it's not one of the Bengals, Bills, Ravens, or Chiefs against one of the Eagles, Lions, or Rams, I'd be shocked, if I'm honest. Obviously, there'll be teams that come through the net, and and there's teams that could surprise people.
Yeah, but I always forget about the Washington Commanders, because they forget how good they were last season, and they're only going to get better, I think. So they're another one. I think they could. I mean, they were the dark horse last year. I think they could easily be the dark horse again this year. In terms of the AFC side, me personally, I think the biggest dark horses for this year, and I think they could even potentially win their division, and this may be a bit of a hot take, is the Denver Broncos.
I've heard a few say that, actually. Steve, who came on for the Eagles podcast 2 episodes ago, he's high on the Broncos. He thinks they might win the AFC West.
Yeah.
I'd have more faith in the Chargers winning it, if I'm honest, more than the Broncos. I don't know why, but maybe that's a hot take as well. But I still think the Chiefs will beat both of them in that division. I still think it will be theirs to lose. So we are now going to head to our Fan Asks Fan section. So it's a new section on our podcast this year in our season previews. Each fan who comes on will ask the next guest who comes on the season previews a question, and they will ask their next guest a question. So Sam, our last question came by the New England Patriots season preview, and Third and Long's Ollie Butler-Henderson, who did ask actually a 2-part question, which is the first time we've had that in our season preview so far. So he asked me, apart from quarterback, who is the most valuable player in your team?
Most valuable player in the Rams? Can I say McVay? Because I know he's not a player, but to me,
exact same thing. I was thinking the exact same thing then.
I mean, if I have to go player, I'd probably say one of the other most important players is probably. I'd probably say Cooper Kupp. No, not Cooper Kupp. Puka Nacua. Sorry, just because he's apart from Stafford, he's sort of like, he's our weapon. I mean, I know we've got Devontae Adams. We don't know how that's going to plan out. We've got a few other tiny bits that sort of spattered around. I just think he is such a focal point for how we play our offense, in terms of not only his catching ability, his yards after catch ability, but also his ability to block on the edge and just extend plays in every single way. And I think it's something that he learned with Kupp, and something that Kupp was always fantastic at. And I think he's learned that in a way that it gives our offense another dimension that maybe a wide receiver that is just more of a speedster would only offer, obviously, the deep ball, or maybe someone like a Chase, who is that sort of threat everywhere. For me, he does the hard stuff that maybe doesn't get applauded from an offense. So I would probably say him, in terms of how we style our offense around the other players, not just Puka. I think he becomes that major part of that.
Yeah, he's going to be. I think having him as number one can always be a bit of a change from being the second choice to the first choice receiver, but I think he almost became that first choice receiver at times last season when he was healthy. So I think he's going to slot straight into that, and I think he's going to have another good year. The second part of Ollie's question, a bit more of a simpler question, but he's asked, who is your favourite player for your team?
Favourite player is Jared Verse. I think he's such a fun guy to watch. It's either him or Byron Young. And the only reason I say Byron Young, and if anyone's out there and wants to look it up, there is a clip of Byron Young sat with his legs crossed. I think it's Byron Young, and he's sat there with his hands crossed and his legs crossed, and he's explaining to them how comfortable a position it is. And there's a really cool clip of him out there. It's easy to watch it because I don't want to do the impressions because it's a bit risky. But if you get the chance, just look up Byron Young sitting, and it's just the conversation that he has about it is just really, really funny and sort of wholesome. So for me, it's either Jared Verse just because of the way he is and his infectious attitude on the pitch, and all the fun clips we've seen of him off in the off season battling up against Aaron Donald and all of that, or it's Byron Young for that one clip.
I think everyone, maybe bar Eagles fans, maybe would be a fan of Jared Verse. Right, Sam. So it's now your time to ask our next guest a question yourself. So, Sam, what is your question to our next guest?
So my next question is, and this is a question that I sort of was asking before with other things that I've done, is if you could do over and bring back a player from your past to bring into this team to improve it significantly, who would you bring in?
I love that question. And I think with the team that's hopefully coming on next, now it's not a guarantee because we said this before when we had Tony Afoke on for the Broncos, and the kind of team we had planned on next would have been an amazing team to have to answer his question. But they sadly had last-minute plans which changed that. So I'm intrigued to see whether this team does end up being the one we do next, because I'm intrigued to see what their answer is, because I'd be intrigued by what they say. But there we are. That is the end of the episode for today. So, Sam, once again, thank you for coming on.
Yes, and thank you for inviting me again. It's always fun to chat Rams.
I bet. And of course, we'll have you on throughout the season, and hopefully I'll bump into you in London.
Yes, hopefully. We'll have to... I know you tend to do a lot of the sort of media stuff outside the stadiums and stuff like that, so I might drop you a message and see if we can just have a hello and maybe get a non-alcoholic drink, because I'll be driving there and back, so I can't drink. But
well, I don't drink either, so we'll be in good company together there. And I'll be doing, hopefully, provided weather's not bad, I'll be hoping to do some outside sort of videos interviewing fans, so you'll be obviously welcome to come on then. I've already got some questions planned to ask people, so it'd be good to bump into, and if we can get you on film, even better. But in the meantime, this has been the Across the Pod NFL podcast, our 2025 season preview for the Los Angeles Rams. I have been, as ever, your host, Andy Davis, with our guest today in Rams fan, Sam Andrews, and we'll see you guys next time.